Shocker. Ibrahim Traoré has just left the world breathless. In the shadow of secret negotiations, amid the echoes of gunfire in the Sahel, a huge secret has just been revealed: Burkina Faso is no longer a small country on the military map. Under the strong hand and the desire for freedom of the young captain, this country possesses a type of advanced weapon that no one ever thought could appear in West Africa. This is not just a story of an arsenal, but the birth of a new power, an earthquake that shakes the foundations of Western power. The question is no longer, can Burkina Faso stand, but, who can stop Traoré? If you want to understand why this moment can rewrite the global power map, watch until the end. And don't forget, like, comment and subscribe to the channel, because you are part of this epic story. On September 12, international media reported that Burkina Faso had completed a weapons purchase contract worth more than $415 million. Including Bayraktar TB2 UAVs, armored vehicles, and heavy helicopters. A military source confirmed, this equipment is not just for fighting terrorism. It is a statement that Burkina Faso is ready to become a military power in Africa. At the same time, leaked satellite images showed a new military complex being built outside Ouagadougou, the center of the deployment of a weapon never seen before in West Africa. The question arises, is this a defensive move or a public challenge to the world? From here, the story goes beyond news reports, it opens a new epic chapter. There are moments in history when a small country suddenly breaks out of the shadow of the weak. Burkina Faso, which was considered a land exhausted by the war on terror just a few years ago, is now turning into a secret fortress. And the center of this transformation is not empty promises, but an arsenal of sophisticated weapons unprecedented in the history of West Africa. Ibrahim Traoré, a young captain in his early 30s, does not just want to defend his territory. He wants to create a message: we will not kneel before anyone. This message is realized with steel, fire, and technology. What the West calls reckless spending is actually a bold strategy. Because in just 2 years, Burkina Faso has completed many arms deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars, stunning not only its neighbors but also military powers. Imagine, in the sky once controlled by the shadow of terrorism, now appear Bayraktar TB2 UAVs, invisible killers, produced by Turkey. The aircraft has proven its worth in Azerbaijan, Libya, Syria, and is now terrorizing terrorist groups in the Sahel. More than 400 fighters were killed in a single operation in Djibouti. This number is not just data, but a warning: Burkina Faso has changed. Not stopping at UAVs, Traoré has also imported dozens of Edgar Yeltsin 4x4 armored vehicles, Mi-17, Mi-24 helicopters, and even Mi-20 SIXS, a rare heavy transport helicopter in the region. The 18-ton armored vehicles, capable of crossing rivers and withstanding heavy fire, have now become a symbol of a military that was once considered fragmented. But what has the world trembling is not the numbers or the contracts. The real secret is how Traoré has combined different technologies into a new defense system. Leaked reports say that some Bayraktar TB2 UAVs have been equipped with thermobaric guided munitions, a weapon that creates destructive pressure over a large area, which once made NATO wary. If this information is correct, Burkina Faso is holding one of the most powerful UAVs in the world, enough to turn the balance of war in the region. An unnamed officer exclaimed, "We are no longer just defending. We have become the spearhead." What made Traoré choose this path? The answer lies in his philosophy of sovereignty that he has always affirmed. In a speech in Ouagadougou, he once said, "If we just wait for aid, we will be shackled. If we only rely on foreign armies, we will be ruled forever." Burkina Faso must rewrite its own destiny. That is not a political slogan. It is the guiding principle for the entire military reconstruction plan. The West saw recklessness, but the people of Burkina Faso saw pride. A people who once lived in fear under the shadow of terror now saw their soldiers marching into battle with equipment on par with any country in the region. $415 million in recent arms deals. 5 Bayraktar TB2 UAVs are operational, with plans to expand. Over 400 terrorists killed in a single operation. Edgar Yeltsin 4x4 armored vehicles, once deployed by NATO, now in Burkina Faso. Mi-24 and Mi-26 helicopters, symbols of heavyweight power, now operating in the heart of West Africa. These numbers are not just a testament to modernization. They show that Burkina Faso is becoming a pilot for a new military model in Africa, one that combines technological prowess, diverse alliances, and the will to self-reliance. When this information was leaked, the Western press ran the headline, "Burkina Faso's dangerous gamble." But is it really dangerous? Or is it only dangerous for those who are used to imposing power on this continent? A European analyst admitted on television, the surprise is not that Burkina Faso has acquired UAVs. The surprise is that they know how to use them more effectively than many other countries. This effectiveness raises the question, who is Traoré being advised by? Is it Russia? Is it North Korea? Or is Burkina Faso writing its own formula? In the eyes of the people, Traoré is no longer a young officer. He is a challenger to the old order. When he stood on the podium, his voice firm, his eyes determined, thousands of young Burkina Fasoans saw in him the shadow of a new generation, a generation that does not bow down, does not beg. A student from Ouagadougou said, "We grew up with the fear of terrorism. Now, for the first time, we can dream of a strong Burkina Faso." Burkina Faso's secret arsenal is more than just weapons. It's a political statement in steel. Because Traoré understands that in today's world, whoever has the most advanced military technology has a say in the global game. And it's this arsenal that opens other doors, negotiations with Russia, a rapprochement with North Korea, and the nuclear fears that hover in the minds of the West. If you believe that Burkina Faso's military might is more than just a story of one country, but a signal of an awakening for Africa, leave a comment below. Because this isn't just news, this is history being written right before our eyes. And then the bigger question arises, is it all just about UAVs and armored vehicles? Or is there a deeper plan, one that involves nuclear weapons, that rewrites the global map of power? It is here that the conversation shifts from modern weapons to Burkina Faso's nuclear ambitions, ambitions that have sent shivers down the spine of the world. Darkness has descended on the capital Ouagadougou, but in the newly built underground bunker beneath the Ministry of Defense, screens are ablaze. Live footage from the northern border is shown. Bayraktar TB2 UAVs hover in the sky, scanning the dusty desert with infrared light. Young officers, barely in their 20s, operate them with such skill that they seem to have been born with technology. In that tense atmosphere, a clear message echoes across the Sahel: Burkina Faso is no longer on the defensive, it has entered the era of offense. If the previous part was only a secret leak, now the world has seen it with its own eyes. For the first time in history, a country considered peripheral has issued a silent declaration of war against the powers that once dominated. The new weapons are not simply steel, explosives or engines, they are a declaration of sovereignty. The people of Burkina Faso understand this. They gathered in the central square, cheering when they heard that the new UAV had destroyed an armed terrorist convoy in just a few minutes. In the collective memory of the people, this is a turning point. From a country that had been robbed of its resources, they now defend their skies with their own hands. That power, although not yet on par with the great powers, is enough to strike fear into the hearts of enemies, both external and internal. Ibrahim Traoré does not appear on television as a politician. He appears as a warrior, wearing military uniform, speaking briefly and decisively. His latest speech was only 12 minutes long, but each sentence was like a cannonball: "We are not fighting to please anyone. We are fighting to survive. And if we have to choose, Burkina Faso will be the country that dares to fire the first shot." This is no longer diplomatic language, this is military doctrine. Traoré has cleverly turned Burkina Faso into a pilot center for a new model of warfare: fast, mobile, based on UAVs, coordinated ground fire, and put young people in command. Old Western military academies never teach this. Analysts call this the Ouagadougou Doctrine. And once it succeeds, not only Burkina Faso, but the entire Sahel Alliance AES will change the rules of the game. Mali immediately announced plans to build a joint UAV fleet with Burkina Faso. Niger, despite pressure from ECOWAS, sent hundreds of young engineers to Ouagadougou to learn how to operate UAVs. A new war ecosystem was emerging, not relying on NATO, not relying on France, and not relying on the United States. But this angered Paris and Washington. If this trend spreads, Western control in West Africa will collapse completely, warned the French general. Meanwhile, the American press called Burkina Faso Africa's time bomb. The more Traoré was criticized, the more popular he became. People from Gao Mali to Niamey, Niger hung his picture next to the AES tricolor flag. A new generation saw him as an icon, a Che Guevara of the Sahel. But with UAVs instead of rifles. But all power has its price. The terrorist groups, instead of weakening, have changed direction. They no longer march in convoys vulnerable to UAVs, but instead are splitting up and hiding in the deep forests. Many intelligence reports say that outside forces are secretly providing electronic jamming equipment to neutralize UAVs. Inside Burkina Faso, not everyone is happy. Some old generals, used to receiving aid from the West, whisper that Traoré is too reckless. They fear a direct attack from NATO or the European Union. And in the dark, the seeds of betrayal are starting to creep in. The strange thing is that, despite all the dangers, the people's hearts are still as strong as steel. In Ouagadougou, thousands of young people volunteer for basic military training. In remote villages, people are willing to report intelligence to the army, seeing UAVs as divine eyes protecting them. Before, we just ran away, said a young mother in Kaya, tearfully. Now we have UAVs. We have Traoré. These words, though simple, reflect the truth: the power of weapons can only exist when there is the power of the people. On social media, the clip of the Burkina Faso UAV shooting down a terrorist vehicle became a global phenomenon. Millions of shares, tens of thousands of congratulations from all over Africa. The hashtags #NewAfrica, #SahelRising, #Traoré Doctrine flooded Twitter and TikTok. This was not just a military victory, it was a psychological victory. An entire continent that was considered weak now saw a different image: Africa could win with intelligence, technology, and will. The world watched, and everyone understood, the game had just changed. Burkina Faso had proven that you don't need to be a superpower to create geopolitical shocks. All it takes is the will and a leader to break the chains. But in this bright picture, dark clouds still lurk. Some secret reports reveal that Western special forces have begun operating in the border area, working with traitors inside. They don't just want to slow Burkina Faso's advance, they want to wipe out Traoré. The story is about to enter a new chapter, where light and darkness collide more fiercely than ever. And the question is no longer whether Burkina Faso can stand firm, but whether all of Africa is ready to stand up with Traoré. Backhand index pointing right. If you are following this story, please like, comment and share so that more people know the truth. Because this is not just a story about Burkina Faso, this is a story about the future of an entire continent. The Sahel night is quiet. But beneath that silence, hidden waves are rising. Ibrahim Traoré sat in the command room, his eyes fixed on the map spread out before him. The red arrows, symbolizing terrorist attacks, were less frequent. But new black dots appeared, signs of another enemy, hidden deeper, more dangerous. It was not just the rebels, but the shadow of the West returning in a more sophisticated form: covert warfare, information warfare, sabotage from within. After Burkina Faso demonstrated the power of UAVs and the Ouagadougou Doctrine, Paris, Washington, and Brussels could not sit still. If they could not defeat Traoré on the battlefield, they would attack from the rear. The international press suddenly rushed to publish articles accusing the Ouagadougou government of violating human rights, controlling the media, threatening regional stability. On major television channels, Traoré was portrayed as a young dictator. But what the Western media fails to understand is that the more Traoré is attacked, the more popular he becomes. The people of Burkina Faso are used to the hypocritical text of the international community. They see the difference right before their eyes: terrorism is weakened, villages are protected, new roads are opened, and their children are no longer being abducted en masse. That simple truth is more powerful than any media campaign. Meanwhile, Traoré's new military doctrine does not stop at the border. In Bamako, President Goïta declared, Mali and Burkina Faso are one front. Their victory is our victory. Niger has also joined, despite the threat of sanctions from ECOWAS. The three countries have joined forces to form the alliance of the Sahel AES. And now their influence is expanding. Chad, Guinea, and even Togo are starting to lean towards the bloc. It is not just a military bloc, but is gradually becoming an independent political economic bloc. No longer dependent on Paris or Brussels. In secret conferences, people whisper about plans to introduce a common currency, the AES, to replace the CFA, a move that, if successful, would undermine the foundations of French financial control in West Africa. But no one is sitting idly by to witness it. In Washington, a secret report was presented to the U.S. National Security Council. If the AES were to form an independent currency, Western strategic influence in West Africa would collapse within 5 years. In Paris, French generals urged urgent measures to contain Traoré before it was too late. So, familiar figures returned. Foreign special forces were deployed covertly on the border between Niger and Burkina Faso. Western security consulting firms were quietly recruiting mercenaries. And the CIA launched a new campaign, infiltrating the ranks of Burkina Faso's leadership. Bribing, dividing, sowing doubt. This was no longer a war of guns and bullets, it was a war of shadows. In that context, Traoré understood that he had to fight on many fronts at once. On the battlefield, maintain UAV superiority, keep the border safe. On the political front, keep the people's trust, block Western propaganda. Internally, detect and eliminate traitors before they can strike. Cabinet meetings were tense. Some old generals feared that Burkina Faso would become the target of a full-scale NATO attack. They wanted to compromise, to return to the safe orbit. But Traoré was adamant, there is no safety in chains. There is only freedom or slavery. We choose freedom. That statement spread like fire throughout the room, silencing all objections. Meanwhile, Traoré's image did not only shake the Sahel. In Ghana, thousands of students took to the streets holding banners, "We want our Traoré." In Nigeria, young activists called on the government to learn from the AES model. In South Africa, independent journalists hailed him as Africa's last chain breaker. This is what the West fears most. Traoré is not just a national leader, but is becoming a continental icon. An icon with the potential to spread. If Burkina Faso, a small, impoverished country, can do it on its own, why can't larger countries? In a backroom room in Brussels, an EU official said bluntly, if we don't stop Traoré, the AES will become the second BRICS bloc in Africa. And so the counterattack plan was drawn up. Increase economic sanctions. Stompardize the new AES currency in its infancy. Fund the political opposition inside Burkina Faso. And worst of all, launch a covert campaign of subversion. The storm is brewing. But in Ouagadougou, no one is afraid. On the contrary, the people seem to sense that if Traoré can survive this ordeal, they will enter a new era, an era in which Burkina Faso is no longer a periphery, but a pioneering flame of Africa. In the night sky, the Burkina Faso UAV is still patrolling. In the command room, Traoré looks up, as if talking to history. He knows clearly, the coming days will no longer be a battle of guns and bullets, but a battle of wills, of loyalty, of hidden betrayals. And deep down, he understands one thing, the most dangerous enemy is never outside the borders, but always hidden within. Before the storm, the atmosphere is suffocatingly silent. The whole of Africa holds its breath. The world watches. And history is about to turn the page. Backhand index pointing right, this is the moment you need to speak up. Please like, comment and share so that more people understand that this fight is not only for Burkina Faso, but for all those who believe in freedom, sovereignty, and a new Africa. Ouagadougou night, the sky is clear, UAVs are still patrolling, and people believe that everything is under control. But in that peaceful moment, tragedy is staged. Within the army, there was an old general, used to living on the breath of aid from Paris. He always appeared loyal, bowing to Traoré, but in the dark, he secretly communicated with foreign spies. The agreement was signed in cold blood. In exchange for power and money, he would open the gates of the capital to invisible hands. The news leaked out just a day before the plan was to begin. A loyal young officer, while checking the information system, discovered an encrypted call sent to a server in Europe. He reported it directly to Traoré. The young captain was not angry. He just smiled silently. Finally, the mask has fallen. The betrayal plan did not stop at opening the gates. That night, a team of mercenaries was hired to do what no one dared to say out loud, assassinate Traoré. They were brought into the city, disguised as technical staff. Weapons were hidden in containers of telecommunication equipment. At 2 a.m., they made their move. The lights in the central area went out. Gunfire rang out. But when they stormed the presidential palace, everything had changed. Traoré was no longer there. He had expected it. The young soldier who had delivered the intelligence had been assigned to act as a diversion, while Traoré himself and his loyal guards had moved to another bunker hours earlier. They had fallen into a trap. And at that moment, sirens blared across Ouagadougou. People woke up in the middle of the night, hearing the gunfire, but instead of being frightened, they rushed into the streets, shouting, "Traoré! AES! Freedom!" In the darkness, the mercenaries were suddenly surrounded not only by the army, but also by the people themselves. They understood a harsh truth: sophisticated weapons can kill one person, but the faith of millions of people is an indomitable force. Within 4 hours, the rebellion was crushed. The traitor was arrested in his own home. His documents, computers, and codes quickly showed traces of Western hands. When dawn broke, Traoré appeared in the main square. He was in military uniform, his face was fearless, his voice was loud. "Last night, they wanted to kill me. But they forgot one thing: a leader can fall, but the people never give up. And today, I stand here, not only to say that I am alive, but to declare, our war has truly begun." Cheers rose. The whole of Africa watched the image on television in silence. Many understood that Traoré had crossed the threshold of death, and from that moment on, he was no longer just a leader, he was a living symbol. The betrayal had happened. Blood had been shed, but instead of weakening, Burkina Faso grew stronger. Loyalties had been tested, and the true enemy had been revealed. From here, the war is no longer ambiguous. It becomes a direct confrontation between a continent yearning for freedom and the forces that want to maintain its chains. The night of Ouagadougou has ended, but the light has just begun. Backhand index pointing right if you believe that betrayal can never defeat the faith of the people. Please like, comment and share. History continues, and you are a witness. As dawn breaks over Ouagadougou, the people can still hear the echoes of the night. Freedom. AES. Traoré. What happened was not just a failed assassination plot, but a historical test. From here, Burkina Faso enters a new era, where betrayal is like a small stone swept away by the raging torrent, while the faith of the people becomes an everlasting flame. Traoré not only survived. He turned his near-death experience into an undying vow: Burkina Faso would never bow its head. And that message spread across Africa, stirring a common dream, the dream of a continent free, sovereign, and invincible. In this moment, we, the witnesses, are not just spectators. We are part of an unfinished epic. Every word, every action, every share adds strength to that wave of freedom. Backhand index pointing right if the spirit of Ibrahim Traoré touches your heart. Please like, comment and subscribe. This is not just support, but a commitment to keep that flame burning. And now, it is our turn to stand up together, so that freedom is not just a dream, but the destiny of an entire continent.